Hi, this is Robin, and this video is about how to restore old faded photos in Photoshop, and it's targeted to beginning restorers, so it's not for pros or experts in terms of the level of what I will be presenting. So just by way of background, over time, as you probably have seen, old photographs can fade, discolor, get scratched or torn, lose content, or show evidence of having acid-based tape applied to them. So for instance, if a photo got torn or if it was put in an album, somebody might have used a standard acid-based tape versus an archival tape, and then the marks start showing through on the photo. So that's something that would have to be restored. Another thing that you might see is if the photos are old newspaper photos, you might also see the content on the images covered with halftone, or what's sometimes referred to as Ben-Day dots. And they are small dot patterns that are used to create shading effects in commercial printing. So in this video, I'll walk through a step-by-step demo showing how to correct fading damage on an old photo. As a bonus, I'll also show how to custom recolor the restored black and white photo. In a separate video, or videos, I'll have to see how the timing works out, I'll show how to deal with the tape marks, the color discoloration of old photos, and how to salvage old patterned halftone newspaper photos. So those will be a separate workshop. This is strictly going to be focused on faded photos. I won't show how to restore severely damaged photos because, as I said, these tutorials are designed for photo restoration beginners. So you're not going to have to be able to paint and recreate missing content. I will include links in the description below the video to the start times for each of the two demos in this video, and I'll put a link to my demo image there too for you to practice with if desired. One last administrative thing. If you're new to my channel or haven't subscribed yet and you want to be notified of my future Photoshop workshops, please click the free subscribe button and the black bell notification icon below this video to get a single notification from YouTube when I release new content each month. If you're already subscribed, there is no need to click subscribe again. You only do it once and then you're all set. So let's just pause for just a moment and then we'll be ready to start demo number 1 on how to restore or correct faded old photos. Okay, so now this is demo number 1 on how to restore a faded black and white photo in Photoshop. The image that I'm using here is a faded studio portrait, and it's a little boy. His name is William H. Shippen, and I got this image from the Library of Congress collection, so I will include the link to this image if you want to work with this photo, but typically if you're interested in this kind of topic of restoration, you're going to be wanting to be working with your own images, but I will include the link if you do want to try with this first. So let's get started on the step-by-step of what we need to do here. So first, over here in my layers panel, which is up on the top right of my interface, and my properties panels below it, and my toolbar is docked right. I have the background image opened, and you can see as usual with the background image, it's locked. So let's duplicate that background layer and not work on the original. You can left click and drag it to the bottom of the layers panel to the add new layer icon, that box with the plus, and you get a copy. Or alternatively, you can, what the background layer highlighted, do a Control or Command J and jump a copy up there. So what I suggest is maybe before we start doing a lot of enhancements to try to make this darker and give it more pop and life again, do some minor cleanups or content fills or things like that at the beginning before we start trying to make it more distinct and less faded looking. So you can see, looking at just my sample photo here, things to look for in yours. You know, there's some problems with the framing of the picture here. You can see that for some reason this was cut off, and so this piece here on the framing doesn't go all the way across. I don't know what happened here, but clearly part of the image is missing down here. So some of this stuff I would personally try to correct first before trying to enhance and get rid of the fading. So let's try that. So with my background copy active with the blue highlight, I'm going to go to my toolbar, and I've customized my toolbar so you can look for where yours is. Behind the lasso tool, which looks like a little lasso here, you use this little right arrow with a right click, and I have the polygonal lasso tool. So I'm going to left click on that and make that tool active. Then what I'm going to do is try to use generative fill and get rid of not only this white missing area, but also, I don't know what this is in the foreground, maybe a table that got into the picture. This is my disclaimer right up front. You have to do what you feel comfortable with for your image with regard to changing or altering content. If you're doing something that's relatively documentary and you don't want to mess with getting rid of things that were in the actual picture, then you have to decide that for yourself. I'm doing this mostly for art purposes, so I have no qualms about using generative fill or altering things in the image to just make it look like a better image. Okay, so now to use the polygonal lasso tool, I'm going to just do a click to put an anchor point, and I do it just outside of the area I want to be filled so that Photoshop has some reference area. So I'll just go right outside here. And I am going to also give the disclaimer that I am not going to be a perfectionist, because even if you work with this image as a first test, you don't need to watch me be a perfectionist. Just know I would spend a lot more time if it was something that I was going to use in real life. Okay, so each time I want to put an anchor point, I left click with my mouse. So I come down here and I left click. I'm just dragging out to the side and left click. And then I come up and you have to close the loop. And with the polygonal lasso tool, if you see that little sort of geometric shape at about the 5 o'clock position next to it, there's a circle. See, if you're not going to close the loop, that circle disappears. So just be sure you see that circle to know you'll get a closed marching ants selection. Okay, so now with that marching ants selection, I'm going to right click inside the selection. And I'm going to come down this menu to where it says generative fill. Now, one other thing for you to consider. If you have less complex looking stuff in your image and it's like a solid area or something, and you don't have a ton of generative fill credits, don't waste your generative fill credits doing something like this. If it's a simple fill, I would suggest you just use content aware fill, and you might want to try it first because it won't cost you anything. It's part of Photoshop. Typically, if you need to create new content, then you need to go with generative fill, which is what I will do here. Left click and then wait. And then when you get the pop-up box for generative fill, if you want to type a prompt for something specific to go in there, you can. If you just want it to look at the surroundings and fill, then just click generate and wait. Depending on your system, it will be more or less fast. Okay, so we've gotten some area filled in where that was all white. And over here on the right in my properties panel, you can see that the generative fill has created 3 options for me to consider. So this is option number 1, and you can see what it's done there. Option number 2, I don't care for because that's just mushed that. And option number 3. All right, so I'm going to immediately get rid of option number 2 with the little clicking on the little trash can because I don't care for it. So there's option 1. Here's option 2. I kind of like option 1 better. So if it's good but not great, what you can do is with the blue frame around the option, or the variation as they like to call it, that you like best, you can come up to where these little dots are, left click and say generate similar and see if you get any better variations, and then again just wait for it to generate. So that's interesting. It's picking up on the fringing there. That's not so great. Huh. Well, it figures the time that I want to do it for a video, it's not doing as good options as I got on my own. So I think I will just go with this one here, even though in the past when I've tried it, it really made it look like a chair and it just kept this up here, but let's not worry about it. So what I also recommend is after you find the option that you want, then discard these other ones, because as you build up the layers, that just adds to the memory being consumed. So I'll just click on the little trash cans for the ones I don't want. Okay, so I only have one variation left, and that's reflected here. So this is the generative fill for the lower portion of that image. Okay, so now what I am going to do is, first of all, I'm going to go back to my lasso tool just so I know what's there and I don't click on the wrong things. I'm a great fan of putting stamp layers in so that I have fresh new layers to start with, but just be aware if you use them, that is baking it in. So if you want to go backwards through your stack to make your layer stack, to make repairs or changes, you'll have to undo all the way down where those stamp layers are. But so FYI. All right, bottom of the layers panel, add new layer icon, that box with the plus, you get the empty layer, and then simultaneously press Shift, Control or Command, Alt or Option, and E, and that produces this stamp layer. And a stamp layer is basically a merging or a composite of all the prior layers into one layer without collapsing the whole layer stack for you. Okay, so now this gives me a fresh layer to try. So now that I've gotten some basic repairs done, I want to start trying to darken this faded image. So first thing I'm going to try and see how it does it is work with a blend mode. So again, in the layers panel, yours might be at the bottom, come down to where it says normal. By default, that's the top blend mode. There's a little down arrow, click on that, and this box section in here is where the darkening blend modes are. So you can try darken, and you just hover and it should show on your image. There's multiply, color burn, linear burn, and darker. So of those, I personally liked multiply. So I'm going to click on multiply and darken my image a bit. Now, it's not only made his clothing and all the details darker, which is what I'm trying to achieve, but obviously it's made the yellowing of the image darker too. So for your image that you're going to be working on, you can see if this is a good standard for you, the way you want it to look, just as it is. If not, right adjacent to where your blend mode is, come across to opacity, because this is at 100%. You can lessen that opacity. Two ways to do it. You can either click on that little down arrow and pull the slider, or what I like to do is just left click on the word opacity and start dragging. I don't need to do a lot. I just want to come down a bit and see. Let me just click the eye visibility off and on. Yeah, so that's already helped. Okay, so I think I will just leave mine there for now and see where it goes. Okay, so now I'm going to add another stamp layer, and it's not really critical, but because I'm at 80%, I just like to start with a fresh layer, so a new layer. So again, bottom of the layers panel, add new layer icon, plus box with the plus, and then the claw maneuver, Shift, Control or Command, Alt or Option, and E. And again, we've got a stamp. Okay. And I think I might have done something screwy, but we'll see what happens here. All right, so now with that layer active, so this is the, I'm just going to label it. By the way, you can label by double clicking on the words and then just typing, and I like to label so I can keep track when I have multi-layers. All right, so that's my multiply blend mode result, but now I'm at normal and 100%, so that's good. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the camera raw filter and see if we can do some more corrections to this. So come to the top of the interface to filter, camera raw filter. Wait for it to launch. So we're now in the camera raw interface. You can see that it's different. And I want to see if I can somehow correct the white balance with this. So over in the right-hand panels, I'm going to look for here, this panel here. And I only keep these two panels open because I use them most of the time. The ones I use less often, I keep collapsed. You can keep them open all the time if you want. Left click on color if yours is collapsed. And here's white balance under the color panel. So it's currently on as shot. I want to see what happens if I click auto. It's a little bit better, but to me, it's made it very blue. So what I want to do is get rid of some of that blueness. So on my temperature slider, which affects blue, coolness and warmness, I'm going to, I think, just take this to 0 and see if that neutralizes it. Yeah, so that's brought it back a little bit to how it was before. I'd like to add a little bit more vibrance to this, or maybe a lot of vibrance. So the vibrance slider is here, and more vibrant is to the right, less vibrant is to the left. And I usually go a little way at a time and then release and see what happens. Yeah, you can see it's making the yellow more vibrant, but that's impacting the details too. Maybe I'll go to 85. Let's see if that. Yep, didn't go to 85. Let's see, just go up so I keep it on an even number. Okay, and then now what I will do to counterbalance that is reduce the saturation. So again, on the saturation slider, more saturated to the right, less saturated to the left. So I'm going to come dragging this handle down. There we go. We're getting rid of that saturation. I sort of like to, for purposes of demos, keep them on even numbers. So I'll leave it on 65. Okay, so we've got sort of a little bit more of a sepia-toned image going on here, and it's a little less yellowed from the old photo. Okay, so now the next thing I do after something like getting the color adjusted, if it needs it, is I will come back up to the effects panel and I'll try to work with clarity and dehaze. So let me start with the dehaze. And again, to the right is less haziness, to the left is more haze. So if you want to add haze, go left. I am very subtle with dehaze because it's adding a lot of black to the image. So I typically keep it like under 5, but you just see for your image what you like. And my cursor likes to jump. So I'm going to keep my dehaze at 5 to start and see what happens. And then next I'm going to try the clarity slider. What the clarity slider does is it's really for more for, I guess you'd say, mid-tone contrast. So let me see if I pull that to the right for more clarity, what happens. That's not bad. It might be too much. You don't want to overdo clarity either. All right, so see this little eye icon here? You can see what it looked like before and after. Yeah, so we're getting this darker and a little bit more technical term oomph to it, giving it more pop and restoring some of the faded look. Now, because we've done these adjustments to the midtones and the dehaze can add a lot of black, for your image that you're working with, you may want to come up here to the light panel and then just compensate for anything that might have gotten too dark down in this effects panel. So, and you don't need to work with everything. I start with the things I think might need it the most. So perhaps the shadows might need some more opening up if it's gotten dark. So Again, to open up the shadows, you'd pull it to the right. See, it gets lighter. And to darken the shadows, you'd pull it to the left. And again, I'm just going a little way and release. Sometimes what I find is best to do with these sliders is go to the point where it's not good and then back off versus trying to creep up on what works. Okay, so to me that looks all right because we've got the wrinkles in his jacket and, you know, different things on his boots that we can see. I can always adjust it some more. Might open up the highlights a little bit because there's some of this graying kind of a look here. So again, highlights to the right is brighter, to the left is less bright. Just a little. I'm watching to be sure his face doesn't get blown out here. Back it off a little. Okay, I'll leave that one there. And so that's looking pretty good to me. And let's just again click on the eye. Yeah, brightened it up. Might bring the shadows down just a little bit. Or else maybe what I will do here, just let's try that, is I want to be sure the shadows are opened up so we see all the details in the wrinkles and the boots, as I said. But maybe with the black slider, let's just see what happens if we go just a little bit left. Okay. And again, I want to be sure I'm not blowing out his face, so maybe just a little bit left with the whites. Okay. All right. So that's the color, the effects, and the light panels. Let me just, it'll keep the settings. I'm just going to collapse this panel. So one other thing you might want to look at and you can try adjusting, I'm probably doing overkill, but I just want to give you ideas of things you can try on your images, is come down while we're still in the camera raw filter to the curve. And again, click to expand it if you don't have yours expanded already. And one thing I want to try is, because as I mentioned, this got a little bit softer blacks, I guess is the best way to do it, and a little bit blown on the whites. So on the curve, if we come to the bottom left corner of the curve, so we have, it runs from blacks to whites, and blacks to whites up here. So, and black to white on that axis. So if we click on this little handle down here and pull it in towards the right just a very little bit, well, I mean, you can do it a lot, but it will crush the blacks. So in other words, it'll make the blacks a little bit darker. If you come up this axis, at y-axis, it will lift the blacks and they will get hazier. So if you want to make your blacks a little richer, come a little bit to the right. And then it seems at this top end of the whites, maybe just pull that in. I'm looking to see here what it's doing. Yeah, you can pull that in just a little bit to balance. And again, let's just see. Yeah, so it made the blacks a little bit richer, which I like. So for me, it helped to add the curve. You may or may not need it for yours. So these are not all mandatory steps. I'm just showing you the effects, and then you decide for your particular image if you like what it's doing or what you might need of those potential tools. All right, once you get yours set the way you like, click OK down at the bottom, and it takes you back to this layer stack. And just let's be sure, yeah, we've gone better here. So we've changed from that, and I'm going to relayer this to camera raw. I don't know if I did row or raw. Raw output. Okay. All right, so now I think what I want to do is add another stamp layer, just so if I need to come back, I don't need to redo it, everything back to this step. So what I like to do to add a stamp layer is come to the bottom of the layers panel, add new empty layer, then do that Shift, Control or Command, Alt, Option, and E all together for this stamp layer here. And then we've preserved what we've done there. All right, so now I want to convert this stamp layer to a smart object before I try using neural filters, okay? So to do that, come into the empty area of that layer, that active layer, right-click, and come down to where it says Convert to Smart Object. Left-click, and you can see it's been converted to a smart object with that little icon. It's not on any of these others. And essentially the smart object is like an envelope you put your image into to protect it. And then it also gives you the ability to make modifications to whatever processing changes you make, which you would not have. It would be more destructive and you'd have to start over again if you don't do that. All right, so with that converted to a smart object, come to the top of the interface, to the filter menu, and come down to where it says neural filters and left click. And again, we're going to be opening neural filters on the right. Just wait for it to load. Okay, and now we are going to come, there's different categories of neural filters. We want the one called restoration, and come down to the one that's called photo restoration. It's still a beta apparently, so they're still making modifications to it. If you have already downloaded this filter, you'll see a little on-off switch like I have here. If you have not, you might see a little cloud, sounds like I said clown, a cloud symbol with a down arrow. If you have that symbol, then click on it to download the filter to your installation. And then you just would have to click to the right to click that switch on and wait while it processes. Okay, so over in the right-hand panel, we have what it has automatically done by default for your image. So you can see there's different categories of sliders that you can adjust depending on what's going on in your image. So there's a general photo enhancement, you can enhance faces. If you have lots of scratches in your image, which I don't have in mine, then you can try working with the scratch reduction slider, but I'm not going to use it on mine because if I try it in mine with no scratches, Photoshop might think all these little lines in the frame around my image are scratches and try to remove them, so I won't work with that. So anyway, so I will try photo enhance and see if pulling it up a little bit enhances in any noticeable way. If it's too much by default, obviously you can then pull it left too. And again, I just do a little at a time till I see if it looks like it's getting better. I'll see if I can do anything to enhance his face anymore. I want to be very careful that it's not doing too much. Maybe I'll leave it because I don't want to have it look like his face is in here. The way they do their models in Photoshop and some other programs from other companies too is you may not see it here, but they're basically putting a little square where the model will work around the face and usually the face and the neck. And what that can do is if you over enhance it, it will look like a cutout of a head relative to the sharpness of the body. So you just have to be sure you're not going overboard on that. Okay, and so scratch reduction, I said I'm not going to do it on mine, but if you have scratches, try it on yours. Click on this little right caret and you'll see there's some other adjustments here too. So if you want, you can try a little bit of noise reduction. I don't have any color noise because I don't have red, green, and blue color noise in mine. I'm going to skip the halftone artifacts in JPEG, I think, for mine. So I think for mine, I'm all set with what I wanted to do here. Maybe I'll do a little bit more noise reduction and see if it helps with any of the messiness that's developed on the background, the backdrop. All right, that might help a little bit, but you have to be careful, and I might take it down just a little bit, because when you increase noise reduction, you soften your image. So just watch your trade-offs. Okay, so then after you get all your settings the way you like, you don't have to do this. This is just for Adobe's purposes. If you want to help them, great. Then you have to decide the output that you want. So because I came in as a smart object, it's offering me a smart filter. You can click the down arrow and see what the other options are. Typically, I will, if I came in as a smart object, use smart filter. Sometimes I use new layer masked or new layer. I do not typically use new document. I will leave this on smart filter and click OK. And then just wait. And by using the smart filter, as I said when we were going in, look what it's done. It has produced two sub layers here. One is a mask. So if you don't like something that was done on part of your image, you can mask it out on this layer. So if most of what was produced you like, you would leave your mask white, and then you would use your brush tool, painting with black on this mask. You'd have to click on it. So here you go. So you'd have to be sure the white frame is around it. And then say you want to paint away something that happened up in this area. Then you would use your brush tool with black and paint in that area that you didn't want, and it would show up on the mask. I'm not going to do that because I feel fine with what happened. If you want to go back into the neural filter and make an adjustment, which was one of the benefits of using the smart object, you would just double click on the word neural filters and that would take you back in again. But I'm going to leave mine where it is here and just say it's okay. So this I'm going to relabel as photo restore neural filter. That was the output from that. Okay, so I'm thinking, this is starting to look pretty good here. One thing you can try if you like, so this is purely optional. So again, let me just, so I don't mess up anything, I have to start all over with here again. Do another stamp layer. And I'm going to try going to the camera raw filter and see if there's a profile that might be interesting to apply to my image too. And again, try it or not for yours. It's up to you to take the time to play. Top of the interface to the filter menu, come down to camera raw filter again, wait, and then right across here where it says profile, come across and click on that grid of 4 images, and you see we have a basic in color and monochrome. And if we come down, there is a category called vintage. So if you left click on that caret, you see some other options. And you can see there's some different profiles. These are essentially looks. If you hover, you see what it does. And you can get some different looks applied that some of them you might like. I have clicked on the stars for the ones I generally like to use in this category and the other categories, so you can highlight your favorites if there's ones you like to use on a regular basis. So I kind of like this number 1 vintage look, so I think I'll click on that. Okay, then I will go back, see the little back arrow, and then I will click OK and come back to Photoshop again. I don't know if there's, yeah, see, to look at it, definitely, that made a good difference in going from faded to a more distinct, restored looking image. So I like that a lot. So keep that in mind. So this was, I'll just call it ACR for Adobe Camera Raw, but it was the Camera Raw filter. And this was the profile. And this was vintage number 1 that I used. And as I said, just do whatever suits your taste. Okay, so something else to keep in mind, and again, as I said, when I've used generative fill is not predictable, and in the past when I've done this, I'm trying to work with this image just when I wanted to try to see what I would want to be able to show you on this, it just formed a nice chair here, and this was all open. But I like the fact that it has what looks like part of a floor here and this kind of ugly area here. So let's see if we can experiment again with good old generative fill and see what happens here. So what I want to do is, I don't like the look of this area, and here I want to select it and see if I can replace it with a nicer floor. And this goes back to what I said. I'm going to duplicate this layer by dragging it down. So I dragged the ACR profile vintage layer, left clicked on it, dragged it to the add new layer icon, and that just created a copy. And maybe I'll just relabel this and say Gen Fill Floor. Even if it creates a new layer, I just like to know what I'm working with here. So this goes back to what I said at the very beginning, the introduction. You can do fill things or not depending on how pure or documentary or artistic you want to be with your image. It's purely up to you. I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm going to select this area from the toolbar using my polygonal lasso tool again. So I right-clicked on that little arrow. I'll left-click on the tool, make sure it's active with the black behind it. And again, I'm not going to be a perfectionist about my selection, but I'll left-click to put an anchor point, left-click at the next point, left-click, so it's that whole floor area I want to alter. And if you end up with a point in a place you don't like and you want to get rid of it and step back, just hit your delete key or backspace key. I'm not sure on a Mac if they work the same, but it would be delete on a PC, Windows. So I'm just going to click around this edge. And to me, this is a simple way to work with this. If you know how to use the pen tool, then feel free to do that to create the selection too. And I'm working with the mouse, so it's a little bit clunky here. But again, take the time you need. I would be spending a lot more time than this in a quote-unquote real-life situation. Okay, so I've got my marching ant selection that I created with that polygonal lasso tool. Now, again, I'm going to right-click inside this, and I'm going to click on Generative Fill. And when this pop-up box comes up, this time I'm going to type a prompt, and hopefully it behaves. It wasn't very good with the chair there before. So I think since what I want it to look like is a floor, a wooden floor in there, I'm going to just say it's subtle, so it's not too intense, hopefully. Hopefully the thing knows what subtle means. Plank floor. Okay, and again, if yours is such that you don't need to type a prompt, great. Or else you can type whatever prompt you want to suit yours. You might have to say carpet, if you have an oriental carpet or something like that. And then click generate and wait. Okay, that's not too bad. So you can see it's generated a plank floor. Let's see what over here on the right under the properties. Oh, I like that better. Except for this area here. No, that I don't like. So that I'm immediately going to get rid of with the trash can icon. This one I like, except for the fact it cut into here. And that's not too bad. So maybe since this one requires less work, I think I will go with this one. So again, if you see one that you sort of like, but you wonder if the generative fill can do better, just click on the 3 dots and say generate similar. I'm not going to have you watch me do that now. I'll just say this is good enough here for government work. Now, one of the things that I might want to do here is to adjust either a blend mode and see what that does. I do that. That's not so great. No, so these are not helping me. And lighten, no, so that's not doing anything, so I'll leave it on normal. Maybe I'll just lessen the opacity a little bit. Just a little bit, so it's not so intense. And then I can clean up these lines that come from the underlying layer. because I don't want the attention over there. All right, so for mine, I have lowered the opacity on what was produced by the generative fill. Okay, so now at this point, this is when I would typically then just go in and start doing some more cleanups, as I call them. So again, I'm going to, and let me go back to my lasso tool so I don't forget. I'm going to add another stamp layer so I can have a fresh, everything combined from the bottom up. So add new layer icon, bottom of the layers panel, Shift, Control or Command, Alt or Option, and E. That's a stamp layer. And I'm going to add an empty layer above this so it won't be destructive. So if I do something I don't like, I can just get rid of let that layer. So bottom of the layers panel, add new layer icon, the box with the plus. We have an empty layer, and I'll just label this. I'm going to do cleanups on this layer. Okay, so looking around and some of the things that have happened on my toolbar, I'm going to come to find, and because I've customized mine, I can't tell you exactly where to find it, but behind my remove tool, I have my spot healing brush, which looks like a band-aid with a little loop coming out from it. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to make this image a little bigger to see things that need to be touched up. The remove tool I find is a little more intense, so I like to start with the spot healing brush. To use the spot healing brush, by the way, the white circle inside is the size of my brush. The green is just my highlighter, so you can see where I am. Make your brush, your healing brush, or your spot healing brush, or your remove tool just a little bit bigger than the area you want to get rid of, so that's all. It has enough to sample the surroundings, but not too much. So I'm going to just pull a line up here to try to fix that. There we go. And I'm not going to get perfectionist about this. As I said, I would have spent more time and actually tried a few more times to get a better selection if it was my own. Okay, so you can see I'm just either clicking on the areas that I want to get rid of, or with the mouse, because I'm using a mouse depressed, I just click and then drag. Okay, so here's something else. So see, look at how big the brush is, the spot healing brush relative to that thing I want to get rid of. So I just use a left bracket key to make that a little smaller, and then click. There's a thing outside his head. I'm going to click and pull, click and pull. And if you're going towards something like a head like that, I would come from the outside in, because otherwise you might pull something out. And I try to just do a little bit at a time. The remove tool is nice because if you draw a circle like I just did, and it'll fill it in. I'm not going to make you sit and watch everything, but you get the idea. On yours, just, do some general cleanups on his outfit here. And I don't want to go too far because, again, I don't want to eliminate things I don't want to eliminate. These are buttons or some kind of decoration, so obviously I'm not getting rid of them. I think these are hooks on his shoe, but I find that distracting, so I'm getting rid of it. This is probably a reflection from the studio light, but to me it's a distraction, so I'm getting rid of it. So you just have to use your own taste as to what you like. Now, let me come back down again. Some things I pointed out. Here's another dot. Let me just get rid of that quickly. Okay. All right, so let's just say that's enough for those general cleanups. But if you remember at the beginning, I pointed out that there's this issues with some of the framing around this. So something I would try to use for these to clean up is I might start with the patch tool And then if that doesn't work, try something else. So while I'm still on this cleanups layer, I will, let me go back to the remove tool, because for me, I like to keep that as my default thing. The patch tool on my toolbar is right below it. It looks like a little raggedy patch there. Left click on that to make it active with the black behind it. And then what you would do is you draw around the area that needs patching, and then you drag it to a source area that you want to be filling it with. So let me click and drag. And again, if you're working with a stylus and a tablet, it might be a little cleaner to work with. And then just drag, see, you've got your selection. So you're dragging it over to the fix source and see if that'll help or not. And then release. And then let me try it over here too and see. So this area where that's missing some content, let me pull that down to where there is solid content and release. Yeah, so that did a better job there. So since this didn't do so great here, let's try, and yours it might work great. So I'd like to show you different tools so you have some options just in case. So if the patch tool doesn't do for you what you need, then you can try the clone stamp tool, which looks like a little ink stamp. So left click on that to make it active. And the way that would work is, again, you're going to select an area to paint with someplace else. This is going to be wherever you click first will be your source, and then where you paint is what you're painting with. So again, I need to make my source stamp a little bigger to cover the area that I want to source, because I want to paint over this area here. So okay, I used the right bracket key to make that source bigger. And then to capture the source, you press Alt or Option, left click, and then release both. Then you come over and you start just painting. And if you watch where I originally sourced, you'll see a little plus sign. So it's painting from there. And I just do very short strokes. And what will happen is that source will, on the right, that I just did, will follow as I pull left. So be sure you're far enough away from where you want to fix, or else it'll start pulling into the damaged area. So again, I'm going to do another source click, since I now have to come over here and I don't want that pulling into this area here. So I'm going to Alter Option. You get that little bullseye for what you're selecting. Left click with the mouse, release both keys, and then start painting again. After you line it up with what's in the circle, and you can go back and forth a little. And again, I'm not going to be a perfectionist. Okay, so let's say that that's good enough, but that was using the clone stamp tool to repair some of that missing picture frame around here. Okay, so let's say that's good enough. We're done with those cleanups. So I'm going to go back to my neutral tool here. So at this point, I would say we're in a really good shape here in terms of moving from the original faded image, and you can see things here. Now, one other thing I might do here, and again, I'm going to make one more stamp tool, a stamp layer rather. Add new layer icon, bottom of the layers panel, Shift, Control or Command, Alt, Option, E, and I'm going to crop, because for some reason there's all this black framing. Now you might like that, but I'd prefer it not be there. So I'm going to come to the toolbar, and this cross-hatchy kind of thing tool is the crop tool. So on the solid handles, I'm going to pull down to where I want the crop to be on each of the four sides. And you can adjust different ratios and things on yours. You can also here at the top in the options bar adjust how big, how dense the grid is. Once you get it the way you like, you can either click this check mark at the top of the interface or hit the enter key. Hopefully it processes and doesn't go away. There we go. That's cropped. Okay, so now we can compare from layer 1 the faded original photo versus the restored photo. So to me, it's made a significant difference in terms of what we've been able to restore. And granted, there was some generative fill, and again, you know, depending on how much of that you want to do, you can decide. So I would label this a sepia, or, you know, kind of more of an old sepia vintage look, let's call it that. Okay, so it's reducing the yellowing, but it's still keeping you with a sort of an older, old-timey kind of look with this kind of coloration. Now, one other thing you can do here, if you want to, is you can do some sharpening if you want. So maybe what I will do, just to show you that too, in case you need it, because this is relatively soft. So let's see if we can get this a little bit sharpened up. So with this layer active, come to the top of the interface to filter menu, come down to where it says sharpen, and I tend, as you can see, it's highlighted, to like to use the unsharp mask. You get the pop-up box, you get a preview, which I keep to on. And so typically I keep my threshold very low, because that says how much, how far into the image away from where you want the sharpening do you want Photoshop to be. And I want it to stay relatively close and to be a relatively narrow threshold about how much it will consider sharpening. So I keep that number typically under 3. The radius is, again, how far, and I don't want to end up with halos. So I am typically around 1 to 1.2, but again, experiment for yours and see. So I will just leave mine there. Maybe I'll go up to 1.1 just to see if it helps. You don't want to end up with halos. And then the amount is how intense you want the sharpening. So I'm going to go up more on mine. And again, I just do it in increments. If you start seeing either halos or a lot of white, what I call snow, that's not good. Back it off. So actually, that's pretty good there. Yeah, I'm starting to see things I don't like with the edges. So I'm going to go back to, where was it? I said that, like that, around 52. So I'll leave mine there and click OK to give it some sharpening. Yeah, you can see that gave it some sharpening, so that's good. Okay, so if you want to keep this vintage look, you could be finished as far as the steps you go through right here. Obviously, you could have done some more cleaning up that I didn't do here on yours, but just converting from a faded to a more restored darkness of the image and details, you could stop there. If you want to convert yours to a black and white look, well, then you can do one more step here too. Now again, there's a couple of options. So bottom of the layers panel, come to this circle with the line through it, which is the add adjustment layers icon. You can either use a black and white adjustment layer or a gradient map. I tend to like the gradient map, but it depends on the image and you can choose. So you can see just by clicking on that and adding that gradient map layer here to the layers panel on the right, we have converted that sepia toned image to a black and white. In the properties panel for that layer, and again, your positioning might be reversed, just left click on this gradient that goes from black to white, and you open the gradient editor. Come down to the bottom where the gradient is, and you have these color stop handles. Now I definitely don't need to add more black, so I'm not going to add black. I'm going to click on, because it's got a little dark, click on the white handle and just start pulling it to the left and then release, you know, every so often to see what's happening. Okay, so that brightened it up. And then this teeny tiny little diamond in the center is for the midtone. So you can, again, I'm going to pull that more to the left and see if I can brighten things up a little bit, because that made it really dark by converting it to black and white. I might back this off. I don't want his face blown. Okay, so let's just say that's good enough. So you spend the time that you want, and of course you can do it with different preset colors too if you want. So click OK to accept that. So now we are back here and we've got our image converted to black and white from gradient map adjustment layer. Okay, so I am going to stop there with this. So we've gone from the original faded and discolored old photo to, we went to the interim step with the sepia tone, and now we've gone to a black and white. So I will say that that is the end of demo number 1, and I will pause for a moment just to get ready for demo number 2. In demo number 2, I'm going to use this restored image that we just worked with and show you, so it's like a bonus demo because it's not so much about restoring, and I'm going to show you how to recolor this if you want to do some recoloring. So it's the moral equivalent of hand painting your restored photos. So hold on for just a moment. Back. So this will be demo number 2, and this, as I said, is going to be a bonus demo because I'm going to show how to colorize the photo that we just restored from a faded to a more richly colored image in the first demo. Now you can, so obviously what I'm doing here is I am working on the photo that I just restored in demo number 1, but you might have other images that you want to work with that you didn't have to restore and you just want to colorize them, and that's partly why I consider this a bonus thing, because it's not restoration so much as enhancement to an image. So what I did was I took the image that we worked with in demo number 1 and I flattened it to end up with this new starting background layer that we can build up from. And if you're not familiar with flattening your layers, then in the layers panel you'd come across to the little hamburger menu, so that's the series of lines, left click and come down to where it says flatten image. This is already flattened, so it's grayed out. But if you had all those layers, it would be bold. You'd be able to, and you would left click on it and it would flatten it down to a single layer. Okay, so now let's start the process to colorize this. So again, let's duplicate our background layer. You can do Control or Command J to jump it up to a new layer as a background copy. Or you can left click on the background layer and drag it to the bottom of the layers panel to the add new layer icon, which is that box with the plus. Either way, you end up with the same thing. Now, something to make sure of, if you are just starting with another image that you've digitized or whatever, and that started out as a black and white, be sure that your black and white photo that you want to recolor is in RGB mode. So to check with that layer that you're working with active, go to the top of the interface to the image menu, come down to mode, and then come to this flyout menu and be sure that RGB color is checked. I also tend to like to work with 16-bit, so this should be okay for what we want to do here. Okay, so again, we already did a lot of cleaning up on this image in the first demo. So if you're starting with a new image, then I'd say do whatever cleaning up that you want to do. And when I say cleaning up, I mean using things like either the remove tool or the spot healing brush or the, here's some other tools we can have, the healing brush, things like that to clean up areas of the image. So remove areas of the image that might be a distraction. So like, let's say the spot healing brush. Let's say that this little spot here is a distraction. So I'd left click on that with the spot healing brush and just get things cleaned up before you start. So I always sort of like to do the cleaning so we're not emphasizing things that don't add to the image. Okay, so I will go back to my remove tool. So that was the cleaning step in your image. So once you get that done, then convert that layer to a smart object. So right click in the empty area to the right, come down to where it says convert to smart object, left click, you get the little icon that shows you it's a smart object and will be protected in that envelope. Come to the top of the interface to the filter menu, come down to where it says neural filters, left click, wait for them to load. And again, you'll get the list of all the neural filters, and this time the category that we want to work with is the color category. And you want to come down to the third one that says colorize. And as I mentioned in demo 1, if you have not yet downloaded it, you might see a little cloud symbol with a down arrow. That means you need to download that filter. So just click on that little icon. I've already done it, so mine is here. And then you will end up with the on-off switch that you can use. So to colorize, you'd click that switch on, wait for it to process. And what you will see over in this right-hand settings panel is this big preview of your image, and then it will have auto-colored your image. So that's what happened here with the original that I had pulled in. And maybe I will pull this in a bit and pull this over. Okay, so you can see that it has tried or attempted to see or to decide what colors would have been appropriate for this kind of picture. So it's kept kind of a light-toned backdrop. It's given the young man blonde hair. It's added some flesh tones to his hands, only one of his shins, not the other, and to his face. And it's attempted, to do something with these curtains here as well. It did pretty well with the planks and the floor, but, the colors are kind of bleeding all over the place. So if on yours, that auto color image did a great job, and you like the result, then you're finished, and that's it. It could be very quick. If you want to, you can come over here and look at some more of the settings here on the right-hand panel. This is a scroll bar, so you can go up and down. You can look at some profiles they have in here. By default, it's set to none, but if you click on this little down arrow, there's a whole bunch of different filters. I don't particularly care for them, so I never use them, to be perfectly honest. So then you can also adjust if you want. So let's say yours maybe came out too faded and you tend to like a lot of saturation. I don't. You could pull the saturation to the right and make it more saturated, to the left, less saturated. If you find you need to color balance a little bit, then you can pull these sliders in the direction that's indicated. So to the left would be more cyan, to the right more red, magenta, green, yellow, blue. If there are color artifacts, you can, pull that to the right a little bit and see if that helps anything. We have already, if you're working on the same image like you worked on before, you should have already done your noise reduction. Don't pull this again. As I said, it tends to soften images to add noise reduction. So anyway, if you are lucky and you got some pretty good colorization and you might just need some tweaks, then you can work with these sliders here. If what happened for me happens for you, then you're going to have to do some kind of customization. So if you totally want to throw it out and start over, then you can click off this box that says auto color image, and it will take you back to your original image and you can start manually recoloring. I tend to not want to do that when I have a portrait image that I'm working with, because for me it's very difficult to get a good looking skin color and even hair color. So I prefer to start with the image that has been, or the recoloring, let me put it that way, that has been offered up by default from Photoshop, and then just modify it. Okay, so I modify versus discard if there's people. The one thing I have not tried, because I don't have any images of that type to try, is I don't know how it would behave on images for persons of color. So, if you get back in Civil War images and things like that, so there could be black people or people with darker skin. I'm not sure how this would handle, to be honest. I haven't experimented. So if that's something that's of interest to you and you want to work with those kind of images, you'll have to see how it does. For you, if it does not do well, then you might have to just click off auto color and start from scratch to get the right skin tones. Okay, so with all of that out of the way, to customize the colors, if you're going to keep the starting skin tones that are here, you have to put a pin somewhere on this preview box. You're not working on this image here, and show it where you want to modify the color. If you don't know what colors that might be appropriate for the time period you're working with, then perhaps do some research online and say 1940s or 1920s or 1890s or whatever, and research, what would uniforms look like? What would this look like? What would tweed jackets look like from that time period? Whatever. Okay, so you might need to do some research if you want it to be period appropriate. So I'm going to click because his outfit is okay, I think. His face and hair okay. I'm going to leave the backdrop and the floor, but I don't like these curtains, or draperies. So I'm going to click, see where my highlighter is on the right panel? I'm going to click on the drapery, and then we get the pop-up for the color picker. And I think I want to make these a nice rich maroon color. So we're already in the red, so let me click down in here. You can see the colors. That's getting a little brown. Okay, so the color that you click on and pick, so I'm just left clicking on the color picker. If you want to pick another color, you would just grab one of these handles and drag it up. So I don't know, maybe let's see, that's down in the oranges. Maybe let's just see what we get up in the reds. Oh, that's actually a little better. Glad I did that. So you just either can click here or drag the handles, and then the color area that you click on will show as the new color in the box here. So I'm going to click OK. And then we wait, and you can see that it has added some more red here. So, and you can see where the point was that I clicked, and that it's showing that it's a red, and here's the color picker color that we're working with. Now, if that's too subtle, you can click inside this circle and pull it to the right, and that's a strength slider, and make the color richer. Obviously to the left then would be the opposite. If it's too dark, you pull it to the left. So I'm going to leave mine there to start. So if you want to fill in more of that same area with that same color, you don't have to repeat this process. You would press Alt or Option, click on that little pin, and pull it over to the next area that you want to be recolored with that same color, and then release. There we go. Now what you'll see can happen is these colors can bleed, and there isn't a really good masking tool in this, and this is still considered a beta. If you want to reposition versus copy that, then you would just click and drag. But if you want to copy the same color to another place, then you alter Option. So I just moved that over so it came a little bit more into this area. So now I want a little bit more in this area here where it's still a little gold. So alter Option, pull one of the pins that has the color I want down here, release. Now I'm just dragging a little bit to see, and that I might push the strength slider below the preview up a little bit. And because we're going back into Photoshop, I'm not going to get too nervous about it if it does bleed, because we can mask on the layer. Now another area, this is all bled blue. It got auto-colored blue down here, so I am going to, I don't want to grab the super strong one because it'll bleed all across. So I'm going to click on the original one again and pull it down. You can see where I'm pulling it with the green highlighter to this area behind the chair. Yeah, and you can see it bleeds all across there. So with this one, I'm going to click on that strength slider handle and pull it down, and then gradually bring it up. Maybe if I pull this, so I'm not alting, I'm just clicking and sliding this up a little bit. And because this did it a little differently than I've had it, this created a different base than I've had it do before. I'm just going to assume all of this base is this brown leather color, so I'm pulling it up so that the curtain just stays behind there. Okay, so I'm going to say that that is looking pretty good to me. So now for the drapery, so now, as I said, it looks like we have a brown leather here and black here. You can decide if you want to do something with that. I think I will try to make this more of a brown because otherwise it gets just too dark. So again, with my green highlighter on the left and the plus sign in it, I'm just going to put a point over in here and click a pin. It's still going to be on the red by default, but we just click on the color picker. And I think I'll come down to the oranges because I think that'll get me closer to browns. And as we come more down into this area, it gets a little more brown. This has a lot of red in it, so I'm sort of trying to color match. All right, I'll say that's good enough, but spend the time that you need. So then I'm going to click OK that I have created a brown to try to color match this brown for over in this area here. Let's see how it does. Okay, so now again, I've got that brown color picker color. I'm going to start pulling the strength slider to try to affect this area here. So let me, without using, I'm just sliding this, clicking and sliding. Yeah, so getting that a little browner, and I'll move it up so it stays up on the top of the platform, and I'll lower the strength so it's just a little back and forth to try to do this. Okay, and then I'm going to do an alter option on this active brown pin, pull it up, and I'll keep it again back away from the front edge, just keep it there. All right, so again, just for sake of demo, I think you've seen enough about how you can do that, but there's one more thing I want to recolor, and then we'll say okay. So again, with his nice little outfit here, and looks like a little military outfit, I'm going to recolor his hat to match his outfit. So again, I'm with the plus sign over here on the right in the preview panel. I'm going to click on the top of his hat there, click on the color picker, and we're going to drag the handle up to the blues, and it's sort of in a navy family, so I don't want to go too purple and I don't want to go too teal. All right, and then I want to get darker, so I'm in the navy range, but his suit is very dark, so I want to try to get closer to that. So I want the hint of blue, navy blue, and I know some of you think it's a lot of talking, but I'm just trying to tell you my logic so you can know what to think about for yourself. Okay, we got the new color. Let's say okay. There we go. And maybe I'll bring the strength down just a tad. All right, so let's say that this is recolored the way I want it to color. It looks like there is some color spill on the background here, and I'm not worrying about this area here because, as I said, it looks like he was in a studio. This is the backdrop, and it looks like there might be more props and things back there that if somebody is shooting from a certain angle, they won't see. So I'm just going to leave them there because that's true to the original situation. One thing I do want to point out that I didn't do here, if you put, maybe I can try it and let's pray it works. Let's say you wanted to recolor the backdrop. So I'll put a plus sign over here in the backdrop, and it's changed it to blue because that was the last active color. And then you say, oh no, I don't want that, and there's too many pins and I want to get rid of it. You come to below the preview and see where it says remove with the little minus button. click that little minus button and pray that that goes away. There we go, it did. So if you get too many pins, you can remove them, and that's how you would do it. Okay, so once you get your image recolored the way that you want, then you come down to the output selection, and I'm going to leave mine on Smart Filter so I can make modifications or masking if I want, but there are other options you can choose if you want. I'm going to leave it on Smart Filter and click OK and wait. Okay, so now we are back in the Photoshop interface with our recolored image, and you can see, I'll just change this to recolored old photo. You can see that it has, because it was a smart object, created a mask that we can work on, and it has enabled you, if you want to go back into the neural filter by double clicking to make adjustments once you see it back on your layer stack. Okay, so that by doing the smart object, you can go back in, it'll hold your previous settings, and you can make modifications. But let's see if we can mask away some of the places where there was bleed that I didn't want. So first of all, you would left click on that mask that was returned. Be sure there's a white frame around it. I want most of this image revealed, so I want my mask to be white, because white masks show, or white aspects of masks show, and black on masks hide. So that means I want to hide this area here. I want to use black. Toolbar, get the brush tool. It looks like a little paintbrush. Left click, make sure it's active. We want to be painting with black. I want to be sure it's on in the options bar for that tool. Every tool has options across the top that you can adjust. Be sure the opacity is 100% and the flow is 100%. Depending on where you're masking, you might want it to be a soft or hard brush. So the soft has a little bit of transition and haze around it. If you don't want the masking to blend, then go with a hard brush. I'll just leave mine on soft for now. And I saw those brushes by clicking over here on the options bar under the brush tip and the little down arrow. Okay, and to make that go away, you just click at the top of the interface. Okay, so I've got a black brush. I'm painting on the active mask. I'm making my brush, so again, the brush is the white inside my green highlighter. So to make the brush a little bigger, I right bracket click. Okay, and then I'll start painting away there. Yeah, so that's not so good because that's not keeping the coloring. So, aha, don't like that. So let's see if I go up here and do another stamp layer. Da, 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 da. I think what I am going to do is try something else. I'm going to, with that layer active, I'm going to use the remove tool. So let's add an empty layer, bottom of the layers panel. See, you just have to experiment with these things and see what happens. So we have an empty layer. I'm going to use my remove tool, which is the one that looks like a band-aid with little magic sparkles. Make sure that's active. And I'll make this a little bit bigger. And I'll just try to color in this red area and see what happens. Hopefully it will fill it with the amber. Yeah, that's a little better. That's better. There. And I'll make this a little bit bigger with my right bracket key. I don't care for this. This is distracting because I want the focus on his head. Okay, so now that was a way to get rid of some of the color spill. See, this is what happens once I start fixing, then I want to fix everything. Okay, so now, so this was remove color spill, and I used the remove tool, which is why I used the word remove here, to get rid of that. Now, another thing you can do for touch-ups, let me add another empty layer. Bottom of the layers panel, add new layer icon, the box with the plus. When we were recoloring, let me zoom in. it recolored most of his skin, but made this look like socks. Now, maybe it was socks, but I'm just going to assume this was his skin, okay? And they made this part skin, but this was left white. So what I want to do is paint some skin in so it matches there. So on this empty layer, I'm going to paint in color. Or recolor area. Okay. To do that, from the toolbar, I will take the brush tool. Okay, and again, I'm going to stay on the soft brush. Now, with that brush tool active and the black behind it, look at the options bar across the top. I like to reduce my opacity when I'm trying to color match to low 90s. So you can either use the down arrow and the slider or left click on the word opacity and drag. So I'm usually like around 90, 91, okay? Then keep coming across. For flow, when I'm trying to color match, I want to do it very gradually. So I reduce the flow to under 11 or 12%. Typically, depending on what it is, something like this, I might need to leave it up a little bit or it won't show. But if you're doing things on skin, on faces and stuff, you might want to be around 7 or 8. So I'll just left click on the word flow and drag to under 11 or 12%. And that's sort of a general guideline, not just for this image. Let me try 11 and see. Okay, so now I have my brush tool active, and I want to make this a little bit smaller because I'm going to be painting in this area here. If you press Alt or Option, watch inside my highlighter, it turns into an eyedropper. So I can sample the color that was put in here. It puts that fleshy tone as the foreground color in the foreground color picker. Then I want to paint in here with it, but I don't want to have to be too careful about it. So I'm going to, on the toolbar, before I start working with the brush tool, pick one of the selection tools. I like to use the object selection tool because I have it set to lasso. And I'm going to make a lasso just outside of this area I want to paint, not too far. So Photoshop knows what I want to be on the selection. Wait a second, and it has clinged, whatever the proper word is, to the edges of the area that I want to paint as a marching ants selection. So once I get that selection and leaving that selection active, I'm coming back to my brush tool, and then what that will do is it will prevent me from going over the edges. And so if I want to build up with this low flow, each release after your mouse button, if you're using a mouse, after each stroke, and that's how you get the flow to build up to the color that you want. And that's why I said you put it low, so you build up the color gradually. And I'm just looking at this one and trying to match the intensity, and with that marching ants I can come as far as stroke as I want, and it's not going to go outside the selection. Okay, let's say that's good. So now I can get rid of my marching ant selection by a Control or Command D as in dog. All right, and this is a bit opaque. You know, you can't see some of the same texture that's going on there. So in order for it to apply that color but not be so opaque, we're going to pray here. In the layers panel on the upper right, come down to where it says normal, which is the top of the blend modes. Click that down arrow and come to where it says color and click. So it's blend layer panel, blend modes, color to apply, and there you go. So it has applied that color, but it's done it in a way that it reveals the texture that was below. Okay, so now I'll zoom back out, and I'm going to go back to my, so you can click on that to make it go back, or else I think D is if you click the letter D, it's the default. And then I'll put this back to my neutral lasso. I like to keep it on the lasso tool, so you do what you want. So I think we are all set. Now this is a little bright, so that's a situation where you could have gone back into the neural filters before you went through all of these steps and made that a little less bright, or you could put a blend mode, you can make a selection on it now and maybe use a blend mode on a new layer to darken it up again, whatever you want. But we have recolored a black and white, or sepia. You can do this with the sepia one too. It's just a different look. With the original black and white, and then this is custom recolored. Original, custom recolored. So that is the end of demo number 2 here. And I mean, so you can always do, as I said, optional steps like touch-ups with the spot healing brush or the brush tool. And again, if it's an image that you didn't work on previously, like we did with this one, you can also do something like working with curves. I'm not sure it'll help this or not, but let me just show you something so you haven't. So this demo is finished as far as I'm concerned. So I'm just showing you some optional tools you might want to know about that you can find useful or not to play with. So I'll do another stamp layer here, and then we're getting into the optional things to play with. Okay. So you might want to try, for instance, adding a curves layer. So bottom of the layers panel, add new adjustment layer with the circle with the line, come down to where it says curves. We've got a new curves adjustment layer, and the properties for that curve layer is here. So again, mine might be reversed location where yours are. So one of the things you can try is clicking on auto and see if that helps or hurts your image. Say that made mine very bright, so I don't care for that for mine, but you can try it with yours. One of the things that you can do here is, I believe you'd have to click Alt or Option, keep it depressed, and click on Auto. Yeah. And then you get the models or the algorithms that you can have so you're setting the algorithm that you want to have used by your auto button. So I have mine set to enhance brightness and darkness and contrast. You could set yours to any one of these others. Okay, so just to let you know, you can set what your auto button does. So I don't care for what that did for me. So I, on mine, am going to click and drag that to the trash can because it didn't add anything to mine. I've already shown you that you can go into the camera raw filter and add different profiles or play with different profiles. Another thing you can try, we already did sharpening, but let me show you another step. I'll drag this down just to show something. If you didn't get the result that you wanted from the my mind is going here, from the unsharp mask, you can try high pass sharpening. So I duplicated that layer by dragging it to this add new layer icon, come up to filter at the top of the interface, come down to other, and fly out to high pass. So filter, other, high pass. And what you get is this interface here. And it's going to be gray like that. So what you would do is you would pull up this radius slider. Let me see. There. So there's my guy. He's lurking under all of that gray. So to do sharpening using high pass, I like to bring it up like that so I can see what's what. And then you bring it down to where you can just barely see the lines of the details in the image. Let me try 0.3, see what that does. Yeah, so I don't know if you can, how well you can see it on the video, but there's just hints of lines here. So once you get just the hint, so you're not going too wide, it's the moral equivalent of like the radius thing, click OK. And again, it's going to stay gray. So come back over to your layers panel and your blend modes, and then you would either apply an overlay or a soft light blend mode. So let me just click overlay. I typically use soft light because it's subtler. I'll do soft light. Okay, so then you see your image again, and that process of using high pass and the blend mode will help you do some sharpening if you need some sharpening. So it's an alternative method to do sharpening. So again, so that's it for the optional steps you can try. So that's it. We've gone from our original base image to a custom recolored image using Photoshop. So that is the end of bonus demo number 2. So just to summarize, in this video, I've presented a workshop for beginners to restoring on how to restore old faded photos using Photoshop. And I included this bonus demo on how to recolor your restored black and white photos, or you can use it on ones that you didn't have to restore also. We walked through how to clean up your damaged photos. We showed how to fix fading. I showed you how to clarify or replace details that are either in or not in your image. Showed you how in the filters to enhance faces, to remove noise, so a few methods to sharpen, and how to use the camera raw profiles to bring old faded photos back to life with some of their preset looks. We definitely worked with a variety of native Photoshop tools to achieve these things, so there was nothing here where you had to go buying other filters or other tools from other companies if you don't want to. Now, this was all focused on faded photos to start with. In a future workshop, I will share additional restoration techniques for old color photos, so ones that started in full color, for old photos that have been tape damaged, and then for old newspaper photos that were covered with what I said were those halftone or Ben-Day dots. So I hope the techniques that I've covered here in this workshop help you restore some old photos that perhaps you treasure and help you rescue the memories that those old photos captured. So take care, have fun experimenting, and good luck with your photo restoration techniques.